We are back with another live episode of Bully Ball on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Jason Aponte, joined as always by Steph Sanchez. Steph, hair's looking immaculate, just like the Niners record.
2-0, baby.
Well, 2-0 isn't 2-0 unless you win in a style that's college football style, right? So in college football, when you win a game and you beat a top 10 ranked opponent, you move up the ranks. And when you beat Hawaii State 58-0, you move up the ranks because everything's style points. But that's not the NFL, right? You don't win on style points in the NFL.
That's true. That's true. But, despite that, I think I was still satisfied coming away with the win. I mean, the 49ers had to do it. It's a divisional game. It's against the Rams. It's basically a home game. So, they had to bring it together at some point. So I'm okay with that. At the end of the day, at the end of the season, when we're looking at, teams' records and we're talking about seeding and all that, we're not going to be questioning this week 2 game and thinking, well, they should have lost that one or they almost lost that one. It doesn't matter. A win is a win is a win. And it doesn't matter if it's ugly or not. I mean, it's just about getting the win at the end of the day. So this is huge going into, week 3 undefeated. I got my eyes set on that Cowboys game because I think both teams, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think both teams are going to go into that game undefeated.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think the positive way to look at this, and if you came here for negativity, you came to the wrong podcast. Okay.
No.
The
Sadly.
positive way to look at this is the 49ers have multiple ways that they can beat you. They can bludgeon you and beat you blowout wise. They can win in a dogfight. They can win when their offense isn't playing as well. They can win when their defense needs to make adjustments. And what I always tell 49ers fans is you're lucky because we always have the same saying around here. If the 49ers play their game, they can't be beat. But there's a lot of teams in the NFL that literally are healthy, play their best game, and they nowhere near sniff wins. Think about having a team so good that you can, quote unquote, struggle, have many missed opportunities, and still walk away with a victory. For me, more than anything, it just speaks to how good this team is. And you have to realize that there are a lot of fans of a lot of other franchises that do not have that luxury. A lot of teams can play their best game week in, week out. They can be healthy week in, week out, and it will not mean a thing. What this means is the 49ers can beat you however you want. You want a dogfight, you want to fight in a phone booth, you want to try to have a track race, whatever it is, the 49ers will find a way to beat you.
That's what makes this team so dangerous. I mean, I think they're resilient too, and it's good that we're seeing that early because we were concerned about the slow starts. You can say what you want about the first half. To me, that definitely looked like a slow start, but it didn't affect them in the end. They came around, they made the adjustments needed on both sides of the ball, and they were resilient and they put points on the board and they came away with it in the end. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. And all other teams in the NFL and the NFC should look at this team and think, man, they're dangerous for that reason. And yeah, they could beat you a bunch of different ways. I mean, I thought the Rams had a really good game plan going into this. And Jay, you told me that the Rams were bad. I know this is a divisional game. They've only played 2 divisional games so far, but I think we can safely say the offense is a little bit better than we would have expected without Cooper Kupp. Like, let's just keep that in mind, okay? They were giving the 49ers defense some problems early. Yes, I wasn't happy with the 49ers defensive game plan early. I'm glad they made those changes, but all in all, again, with these divisional matchups, you just never know what's going to happen. And because they know each other so well, I think we saw the Rams come out with a great game plan to neutralize the 49ers pass rush. I mean, we saw that the 49ers had 0 pressures in that first half, and they dialed it up to 9 pressures in the second half. So, just those differences that they made, the adjustments that they made. I think that's another thing. That's another big takeaway, right? Like Steve Wilks, that was one of the questions we had about Steve Wilks. Would he make the adjustments that DeMeco Ryans was so good at? Yes, it's a small sample size. This is just one game. But, I think I was pleased with the adjustments he did make at halftime.
Yeah, and then I guess we should just get right into it, right? In a game where we would say that there's a lot of missed opportunities on offense, the 49ers still put up 30 points. I don't know how else you can spin this. And the negativity is well, they won't be able to do that in the NFC Championship game, or they won't be able to do that against the Dallas Cowboys. Can we qualify for the NFC Championship game before we start to worry about that? Can we start to see maybe Brock Purdy doing this as a trend before we start to hit the panic button? The reason that the Brock Purdy misses have caused such a stir is because we're not used to it. Meaning it's when you see a guy who hasn't even started his 15th game in the league yet, and he hasn't missed those throws yet, and he hasn't missed them when they're walk-ins, and then all of a sudden they do, it's, oh my God, the sky is falling. No, everybody misses them. I watched Patrick Mahomes for an entire half against the Jacksonville Jaguars throw up interception after interceptable ball. It looked terrible for a while. Josh Allen leads the league in turnovers. Joe Burrow looks awful in week 2. Every single quarterback in this league has games like that. Every single one. But yet, the standard that Brock Purdy is held to, because he's miles above his years, right, playing, again, the one thing that I'll look at is, sure, there was missed opportunities, but the game never felt out of command. He never felt like he was spiraling. It never felt like there was that moment where when other quarterbacks, and not just Jimmy, just so everybody doesn't start crying, not just Jimmy, when Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard or anybody else that was ever under Kyle Shanahan as a 49er quarterback would miss those throws, would absolutely spiral and would absolutely still be in danger of putting the ball in harm's way. Brock Purdy missed those throws and kept going and never turned the ball over. No turnovers is the biggest part. And that's the thing that nobody's giving credit to, because one turnover, it felt like this entire game was going to flip the game. And the Rams committed both of them. And they were both on interceptions. And what did they do? They flipped the game and the 49ers won. For me, more than anything, the missed opportunities are fine if you want to use them to predict some sort of outcome in a game that the 49ers haven't even qualified yet for. I think that's silly. And the shock of seeing Brock Purdy miss those throws is probably what causing the more uproar, because he never misses them. So for me, again, this is just a blip on the radar. But if you look at it this way, with those missed opportunities, the 49ers still scored 30 points. And the other thing is, no matter what, Kyle Shanahan is going to scheme guys running wide open. Those are the positive things that I have to take away from that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Rob put that graphic up on the screen, because I was going to bring up that tweet of how good he is in intermediate, and that's 10 to 19 yards. In his career, it's a small sample size, right? But in his career, his 50 for 60, 83.3 completion percentage on intermediate throws, 846 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions as well. But no other quarterback since the beginning of 2022 is better than 67%. That would be Lamar Jackson. So for Brock Purdy to do that in the intermediate levels of the field, I mean, I think that's pretty impressive. So, but I'm with you. I think a lot of people were kind of waiting for this shoe to drop and, have their priors confirmed, right, about Brock Purdy, because a lot of people going into this season were skeptical about Brock Purdy, weren't convinced that he was the real deal, as Kyle Shanahan called him. Like I'm still very optimistic about Brock Purdy in his career. There's no reason to not feel good about what he's put on tape. Now, of course, this wasn't Brock Purdy's greatest game. Like, we can objectively say that, but at the same time, like, we're not here ready to hit the panic button either, because Brock Purdy is still capable of running a really impressive 2-minute drill before the half to put points on the board for this team, or help put points on the board for this team. And that stands for something too, right? So, and what you said, Jay, he didn't put the ball in harm's way. And that is huge. In a game that's so close, you have to be able to protect the football. And he did it in this game. And that did make a huge difference in the outcome. As we mentioned, Stafford with the 2 interceptions. So, yeah, I'm not worried about Purdy. I think he's going to work on those throws. He mentioned those are throws they work on in practice already, but when the bullets start flying, sometimes you get slightly different results, right? So I imagine he's going to work on that with his receivers a little bit more this week. And at some point later in the season, he's going to hit one of those, because what I saw in the preseason, remember that back shoulder throw that he missed to Ayuk in the preseason? What did we see in week 1? He hit that throw. So, I mean, it just takes work sometimes, and he's a young quarterback. And the good thing is, like, I don't think the arm strength or, all this stuff about him not having a weak arm and things like that, or like, oh, his elbow, is that going to have effects on his arm and his strength? That's not the concern. He overthrew guys. So you rather him overthrow than underthrow, because you underthrow, you let defender get to that ball. But that's the one positive I could take away from it. But I think he's going to hit those at some point. I'm not worried about Purdy in the least bit. And at the end of the day, yeah, we should feel positive about the 49ers still being able to put up 30 points, even without Purdy not having his greatest game. Credit to Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, because I think those are the two guys that really lifted this team up. And, they've had some really good games against the Rams, those two. So if it was going to be anyone, it would be those two guys, especially Deebo. I mean, I think he just fights for every yard, and his touchdown, which ended up being a run, right? It was a short pass, like kind of a screen, but he took that one, and that was just a Deebo run right there. Like him evading defenders, pardon me, and getting it to the end zone, right? So you love to see that from Deebo, and Christian McCaffrey setting the tone early with his little stiff arm there on Akella Witherspoon. Witherspoon was getting abused in this game. Like I almost ended up feeling bad at the end of it. I think Deebo even had like a crazy stiff arm on him too. Not on this play, but on another play. And so, sorry to that man.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Christian McCaffrey, because another point of contention, and no loss is without anger. No loss is without people losing their mind over something. Christian McCaffrey played all 57 snaps for the San Francisco 49ers. Okay. First of all, this feels one game specific. Mm-hmm. And what this means is, and Kyle Shanahan spoke about this after the game, this wasn't the plan. But when you're in the heat of battle and the pads are popping and you start to look around at who's confident, what are you confident in? I'm confident in my stud. And it's funny because whenever Kyle Shanahan gives the ball to somebody that's not one of his studs, it's, why are you not giving the ball to Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, or... So let me just paint a picture real quick. Kyle Shanahan, Sunday, wanted to feed his studs, and he wanted to go home on the back of his studs. To me, and I'm not an NFL coach, to me, kind of seems like a good idea to put the ball in the hands of your best players in this game, especially because the game was close, and this game was probably way closer than you expected. Next week, or in 2 days, the New York Football Giants will show up, and I doubt Christian McCaffrey is going to have to play every single snap. And I doubt that they are going to have to force feed him and give him the ball and Deebo Samuel the ball as much as they did, because it's the New York Giants. This Rams game was literally the time where he felt confident that he should put the ball in the hands of his studs. If Jordan Mason comes into this game and he runs and he's stuffed for 2 yards and he gets nothing, or he fumbles the football, people would lose their mind. Where's Christian McCaffrey? I can't believe you didn't give McCaffrey the ball. You can't have it both ways. Kyle Shanahan saw how the defense was playing, saw how his offense was playing, saw that his quarterback wasn't necessarily as sharp, because the one throw that concerned me the most with Brock Purdy was actually the throw that hit Deebo on the back shoulder on the slant. Those you got to have. Those deep shots, those are like 50-50 sometimes. That third down where it bounced off of Deebo's shoulder and you had to put that ball in front of him, and he usually does, that's much more concerning than any other throw deep downfield. But Kyle Shanahan assesses, well, Brock's not exactly sharp. Our defense isn't exactly where it needs to be. I need to take this thing home. And how better to do that than to give the ball to your studs? Because if he didn't, and he gave it to Jordan Mason, or he put Ty Davis Price in, and he fumbles and he's not doing anything, or he misses on pass pro, and it makes Brock Purdy fall over and fumble the football, and the game changes. Well, where's Christian McCaffrey? Guys, it's a one-game thing. He fed his studs. That's how you win ball games, is feeding your studs. I don't understand the outrage on this one either.
I'm actually glad that you mentioned pass pro as well, because they needed all those guys to contribute on pass pro in this game. They were double teaming Aaron Donald much of the game. And so I think that was a point of emphasis for them. And I don't know, like, if you can trust those other guys as much as you can trust a guy like Christian McCaffrey. And when you have a stud like that, it's easy to forget about the other guys like on this depth chart. Like, sorry to those guys too, but I don't blame Kyle one bit. It was a close game, so I understand the volume, especially late in the game, like when you're trying to hold on to the football, not give the ball back to the Rams. You're just trying to, survive and get those yards. So, I understand it. Jordan Mason had issues with fumbling, in the preseason. I wouldn't want to put him out there too. Elijah Mitchell, like, who knows? Like, we didn't even see Elijah Mitchell, much in the first game either.
And he
If
doesn't
anything,
fumble. Elijah Mitchell doesn't fumble.
no, I know. If anything, though, like, it was more egregious that we didn't see Elijah Mitchell in the first game, because there was a point where that game was pretty much like Dunzo, and McCaffrey was still out there. So that was probably more an issue than it was in this week when it was like a closer game, right? But I wonder if maybe Elijah Mitchell is still not 100%, and maybe that's why they hadn't put him out there. I don't know. We don't really know the specifics, but I know he was dealing with an injury much of the preseason, right? So who knows if that contributed to anything. But I would expect, that we do see more Elijah Mitchell on a short week. Christian McCaffrey might be feeling this game just a little bit extra. And Thursday we probably get a better mix. And yeah, you said it, Jay. Like, I expect the 49ers to come on top early in this game, and that would benefit them, right? Because it is a short week, and you want to pull some of your guys at least on some plays if you can. But yeah, I mean, McCaffrey, I don't blame Kyle for wanting to put a stud out there. Through 2 weeks, he has 42 carries, 268 yards. That 268 yards leads the league right now as well. 6.3 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. And quite honestly, he hasn't even been that involved in like the passing game, really. He's only had 6 catches through 2 weeks. So I'm sure that will enter the conversation at some point. But, Kyle, for now, keeping that in his back pocket. But I don't blame him at all. I mean, and you said it, fans would get angry if someone else toted the rock and they made a mistake of any kind. They didn't get the first down. So it's fine. I was much more worried about it in that first game, but I expect there'll be a better balance on Thursday.
And not only is the man talented, and anytime he touches the ball is a chance for a home run, the gravity of him being on the field makes things easier for everyone else. Just his presence there, right? If Elijah Mitchell's on the field, you're not worried about them throwing it to him out in the backfield. If Jordan Mason is on the field, you're not worried about them throwing it to him either. When McCaffrey's there, it can be a draw, it could be a screen, it could be an outright route, it could be him just pass pro. You have to watch all of those things. In a game in which Brandon Ayuk was in and out of the game with an injury, the 49ers were down another stud. So what do? You go to the guys that you trust, and Debo and Christian McCaffrey were that. And for me, again, this is a one-game thing. I guarantee you, and Kyle talked about it right after the game, was talking about, like, man, I didn't want this to happen. That wasn't the plan. Yeah, to me, what that sounds like is I would have loved to get Elijah Mitchell involved, but I realized I can't trust anybody but my stud to get it done. So I went with him and I rode him. And that's it. You send all those picks for him. He's that type of player. It's week 2, but you're not going to need that in week 3. Certain weeks you're going to need that, right? And this was one of those weeks. And you won't know when you'll need that until you get into the heat of battle. And that's kind of where it is, right? You look at the way your defense is playing, and basically you're watching a team that at the half, instead of kicking a field goal, went and they tried to score a touchdown. That's probably based on the defense. That's probably based on the defense right there at the half. That's probably Kyle Shanahan looking around saying, you know what? My defense hasn't been playing well. They're going to get the ball back. I can't take 3 here. I'm going to go for it. And it worked. Again, everything, the ebbs and flows of the game determine how you use players and what your play calling is going to be. So in this game, he felt that it was best to have Christian McCaffrey on the field. And who can argue with the results? Now, if you want to extrapolate these snaps and touches over a full season, obviously it's not ideal. But again, there are going to be games. I doubt that Christian McCaffrey is going to have to play every single snap against the Arizona Cardinals. I doubt that Christian McCaffrey is going to have to play every single snap on Thursday. But in certain games, you want to be able to rely on your studs. And why have these studs if you weren't going to give them the ball and help you win games? This is the part that confuses me. Do you want your studs to have the ball, or do you care about worrying about a game that's not happened yet, in which they probably won't be using Christian McCaffrey as much? That's the thing.
But speaking on that game on Thursday and just talking about one other player on this offense before we move on to defense, the 49ers had to kind of operate without Brandon Ayuk for a good portion of this game as well, because it looked like he was dealing with the shoulder injury, that happened pretty early in the game. He was in and out from that point on. It looked like he was going to have some involvement, kind of early, but they stopped really throwing him the football, after he stayed down on the field for a bit. So just another example of this team being able to win without, everything going perfect. I mean, you had Brandon Ayuk, who, like I said, I thought he might have been a good part of the game plan, especially after what he did in week 1. But they kind of had to pivot away from that too. And so without Brandon Ayuk, they were still able to, stay in this game. Other guys stepped up, as we mentioned. So Brandon Ayuk, though, they did not practice yesterday, but had they practiced, Ayuk would not have been out there practicing. So something to monitor going into that Thursday game. And if I'm being honest with you, I'd be fine if they just rested Brandon Ayuk for this one. It's a long season. It's barely week 3. This is a short week. I think it's better to have him ready for that week 5 game. I'm telling you, Jay, like my sights are set on that week 5
Everybody
game.
is.
I can't
is.
stop thinking about it. So I'd rather have him like ready to go for that. Don't risk any, re-aggravating something or making it worse. So if they're without Brandon Ayuk, I think I'd be okay with that. But, let's jump over to the defense, because they started off slow, but look, some guys did step up. I want to talk about some guy who's getting a lot of heat on Twitter and just like everywhere. A lot of people are thinking he's a ghost out there, and where is he? And I'm talking about Sir Nicholas Bosa.
I was gonna say, is it your impression thing? One quick thing before you get into this. Thursday might be cool to feed your other stud. Hey, George Kittle. Let's just break you out the plastic and let you be brand new on Thursday as well too. Like, okay, that's the funny part. Is like, yeah, Brandon, sit out, bro. It's okay. I think Kittle, Ayuk, Kittle, Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey should be just okay to beat the New York Giants. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fine. You know what? I'm actually like, I do get surprised that teams put so much focus on George Kittle, especially around the end zone, and that like he will have 3 guys like hovering over him when they're in the red zone. So that's pretty crazy to me, because like a lot of people are like, he's taking a step back. Clearly defenses don't think so. I mean,
No.
they're giving him a lot of attention. And so that's why like through 2 games, we haven't seen much of him. But yeah, on Thursday, that might be a really good game to get him more involved and have him be a part of the game plan. So not that he hasn't been part of the game plan, but you know what I mean. So
yes, of course.
But Nick Bosa, man, like people doing my dog dirty because they talking like he's not doing anything through these first 2 games. And look, I understand. I think we all expected that there would be some, getting acclimated, getting into football shape. Like we know that was going to be the case when he missed much of the preseason, all training camp, all of that. Like it does take time, even for a guy who's in good of a shape as he is. It's different to get in football shape, because you out there, you're making like different moves and things like that maybe you aren't when you're just training. So, but you know what I saw in the second half of this game, especially when, mind you, the entire defense kind of came alive. I saw a more active Nick Bosa, and he was getting close to getting some sacks there too. That doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but he did have, I think, 5 pressures in this game and 3 quarterback hits. So he was getting active, and, Matthew Stafford felt that pressure. I assure you of that. And, Pickett as well. So while he's not getting on the stat sheet yet, he is going to, okay. He is going to, maybe as early as Thursday. I'm not worried about Nick Bosa, man. Like if people watch what he did, and I'm very tempted to do like cut up like the all 22 of like just the defensive line so people could see what he did. man, they would know that he was disruptive. It's not always just about getting the sacks. I mean, we talk about the same thing with Eric Armstead, right? Like he doesn't get on the stat sheet, but he's still very disruptive. The quarterback still has to know where he's at all times. I believe the Rams like double teamed him a pretty decent amount as well. The Steelers even more. So that's part of the impact that he makes in this game. It's not just about one guy doing everything and getting on the stat sheet. Sometimes it's just about getting that disruption and opening things up for other guys. Overall, like the defensive line didn't really do anything in this game. It was Fred Warner who got the sack, right? If you want to look at the stat sheet. So it's not just Nick Bosa. So why are you singling him out? But, I think there's going to be better days for Bosa. And like I said, could be as early as Thursday.
Yeah, I don't want this to come off wrong. Fans watch football with an alcoholic beverage, and they're waiting for the announcers to say someone's name. And that's the way that you signify that someone's done something. And it's been 2 straight games, and you haven't heard sacked by Nick Bosa. So you're worried. At certain points, we got to start watching the damn games. Like, we have to actually start watching the games, watching the football game, not tweeting
Jay,
about
And Jay, like, just to interject, like, watching the game and watching it over and focusing on one player is different too, because like watching the game live, like you're not always paying attention to what Nick Bosa is doing. So like it's easy to miss those things. So people are going to be like, well, I did watch the game and I didn't see him do anything. Well, you also weren't watching him probably. So yeah, go ahead. Like that's part of it.
Watching the games and watching the game while drinking with your buddies and tweeting and looking at your phone, checking your fantasy scores. That's not watching the game. Watch the game. For instance, Nick Bosa was fine, by the way. He was fine. And down the stretch, he was absolutely all over Matthew Stafford, making him get rid of the ball early on. And someone pointed out in the comments the same thing. Nick Bosa being there gives advantageous situations to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Javon Hargrave was an absolute menace in the second half. He is this close. He is this close to breaking out and getting 1, 2, 3 sacks in a game. And I think it's going to be against this horrible New York Giants line because he's already terrorized them before as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a combination of in the beginning of this game that the 49ers defense came out a little lackadaisical. And also, I also got a little bit more insight as to why that is. Steve Wilkes does like playing guys way off. And that was something that the Rams knew. They game planned for it, and they got the ball out quickly. And Stafford's a good quarterback.
Yeah.
But it's a combination of being frustrated with the way that the game was going early on. And then the other combination of not hearing Bosa's name about sacks over and over. Well, he's a ghost, man. I don't know. He's not in shape. I don't know. Why did he take so much time off? Guys, please, I implore you, slow down. Stop tweeting. Stop drinking. Stop talking to your friends. Let's watch the game, and let's make sure that we are being completely objective at what we're looking at. There's ways to affect the game without affecting the game. We talk about it, like you said, with Eric Armstead. Nick Bosa's fine. He is still putting up pressures at a rate that is just like normally his thing. The only thing that hasn't come is the sacks. That's it. If you're a sacks person, I understand because there is value to somebody who, so like sometimes at this point, Nick Bosa finishing the job, that's important too. Like I'm a big pressures over sacks person, but sacks are you finishing the job? And that's important too. But sacks aren't the end-all be-all. We talked about it after week 1. Dre Jackson got 2 sacks because of Eric Armstead. Like, those things are possible. But just because you haven't heard Bosa's name called doesn't mean that he's not having an effect on the game. And I think that's where we have to stop with the whole, well, he's a ghost, well, he's out. It's not true. It's just not true. It's just early on, you were frustrated with how this defense looked. And that was the part that I think combined with everything else is probably frustrating for fans.
He had 5 pressures that tied for most in the game with Javon Hargrave. So, I don't know what people are seeing. And also, pass rush win rate, 29.7%. I don't know if that's the season or just in that game, but it was number 1 for PFF. So, he's winning his battles. And mind you, like I said, he's been double teamed much of these first 2 weeks. So, I think that has something to do with it too. Defenses know how good he is. Defenses know they have to account for him. And so they're doing the most to try to stop him. And through 2 games, it has led to him not getting those sacks. Those are going to fall on his lap at some point. So we just got to be patient with it. It's Nick Bosa, okay? He's going to get it done. But Jay, you mentioned another defensive player on this line who, might have surprised a few people because he had a good game, and his name is Javon Ken Law, right?
6 pressures and 6 hurries in 31 true pass sets. Now look, it's 2 games. It's 2 games. This isn't a predictor of how his season's going to go. But what you need to be impressed with is that Javon Ken Law is doing something that you haven't seen even when he was healthy as a 49er. Javon Ken Law has always been known as a run stuffer, and has always been known as a guy who can occupy those blocks. Well, now he's adding this to his game. And who would have known that possibly, situationally, Javon Ken Law has a chance to really thrive now. And this is what we were talking about all offseason when we were saying about the depth of this line. Sure, when you strip all the expectations of what Javon Ken Law was supposed to be with his high pick, and you just realize that right now he is like a cog in the machine as a defensive tackle who will rotate in on certain plays, it keeps him fresh, it keeps other people fresh, and it keeps the pressure going. It's only 2 games, but I'm happy for the young man. And if you want to say, hey, listen, well, whatever, he's a bust because he's not, strip that away. Right now, he is a depth defensive tackle on his team. And when his number is called, he's producing. I don't think you can ask anything more of the young man right now because he's not going to start over Armstead. He's not going to start over Hargrave. But if Javon Ken Law is showing you that he can now pass rush on top of what we kind of knew about him as being a better run defender, now you can start to get creative. I think we saw in week 1, 5 down linemen. What if it's possible where, you get to a line where it's Bosa, Kinlaw, Hargrave, and Armstead's the other edge. And Armstead gets a chance to thrive against a tackle that is a little bit weaker. It just opens up all the possibilities. And I'm just happy for the young man because a lot of people were ready to throw dirt on his name. And now in his time, all you can do is grab the opportunities that you have. And Kinlaw's been playing very well, man.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of people saw it in camp too. Like he looked explosive. He looked like a different player, slimmed down. And in the preseason, I think we saw kind of the opposite, right? Like he did sort of struggle, but he was also playing a lot of snaps in the preseason more than he is right now. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. It certainly seems like him having less snaps and coming in as more of a, secondary rotation guy has really allowed him to do what's best, what he's best at, which is he's been explosive. And, I think he's getting some disruption there. So yeah, it's working great for him. It's working great for this defensive line. So yeah, you mentioned it's a small sample size, right? It's just the first 2 games, but this is a good sign, not just for him, but for the entire defense, right? If he can get some pressure, because anything he can give you at this point is a bonus. Like
Yep.
we mentioned that too. So we'll take it, the team will take it. And yeah, this is a step in the right direction for Kinlaw. So yeah, we're loving that for him.
Yep.
But there were some guys in the secondary that I think made some nice plays. I know we mentioned early they were playing, I guess Lenore said they were playing zone. And then they switched over to more man in the second half. I didn't like that strategy. So we'll see. It didn't work against Stafford. Stafford, of course, is a top 10 quarterback. So, maybe it'll work some other weeks where you're not playing Stafford. I don't know. But I don't know if I like that off coverage so much because it does give some room. If it's going to work, I would like I think the defensive line to maybe just be a little more aggressive in that case. But I don't know.
Well, Stafford did a great job of getting the ball out quickly. That's the thing is you can't sit back in zone with a quarterback who can actually throw the ball and pick you apart and is quick with his decisions, right? That's the thing. And one thing that I really found interesting is there was only one other linebacker other than Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw that played any snaps, and it was one snap by Oren Burks. The 49ers for 2 straight games have been straight up in nickel the entire time. All the time. There is no third linebacker. The idea of a base defense, that's out. And that's kind of what we've been trying to tell you about. Well, he doesn't run the base. It's the NFL. Everybody's out in, 11 personnel, whatever it is. Everybody's got 3 receivers. You're not going to be in base because there is no more base formations. That's just how this works right now. You're going to have 3 receivers on the field. You're going to have guys that you need to cover, and you can't do that with a third linebacker. You just can't. Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw are fine, but you're going to exclusively see nickel, right? Now, who knows, right? This week might be the week that you see a little bit more of a third linebacker because the Giants, Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, Sterling Shepard, Darren Waller, you might see a little bit more of that, but I would anticipate that you don't see third linebackers at all, like for most of the season. And that's just because that's the way the NFL is moving. And you're going to need another guy out there that can cover. And that's what's so important, especially in this 49ers defense at nickel, is you got to be able to stick your nose in there on run defense. Like, you have to be able to get your helmet dirty and get in there. That's sort of what made K'Wan Williams great, and that's what made Jimmy Ward so valuable when they put him down the slides, because Jimmy Ward's a hitter and he's going to get in there. So it's just, again, it's more about the way the NFL is going, and the idea of a base defense is something that's a little bit outdated at this point. Like, it's just something that you're not going to be able to just do in this league when everybody's trying to spread you out with as many receivers as they can.
Yeah, it's a different NFL, so you do have to roll with the punches. You do have to adjust. But so going along with that, more nickel means more question marks for the 49ers, at least so far through these first 2 games, because they've been going back and forth on who they've been putting out there. They had Ambry Thomas on the outside to start the game, and then Lenoir in the slot. Then Ambry Thomas, according to them, it was a knee injury for Ambry Thomas. He's still dealing with that anyway. So I suppose that's true. That's what I'm saying, because like now this is 2 games in a row where after
he's struggling,
was getting picked on quite a bit, and
it was a concussion. His knee. No, it's his knee.
And then he got cleared. He was then cleared after, like, okay, I see. It's interesting, very coincidental.
Like they're just like, Ambry, start limp a little bit. Like, then we could just make sure that nobody has any.
So there's like two games in a row now that there's some phantom injury. Okay, I don't want to speculate.
It's not a phantom injury, but
it's not a phantom injury. But
it's very curious. It's very curious.
Yeah. There you go. And so they subbed in Isaiah Oliver in the slot, and so that put Lenoir back in on the outside. And Oliver, in this game didn't start off so hot either. I mean, I think he missed a tackle or 2, early. But in the second half, like I mentioned, the entire defense came alive in the second half, and they had more energy, and they were starting to make plays. And Isaiah Oliver, did too, including a couple of big tackles in the second half. One was like either like 3rd down. It was like 3rd and short or 4th down. I don't remember, but he had that tackle for loss on Kyren Williams. That was a huge play, a momentum shifter. And then also the interception that he had. So he was on it in this game. And I think it's enough for him to maybe keep that job until, he proves otherwise. And that's a good sign, because I personally prefer Lenoir on the outside. And I've been expecting for quite some time that Oliver would eventually be the guy that they signed him to be. Like, it was only a matter of time. It seemed like maybe it was just like a mental thing with him early on. Maybe he thought he had the spot already when he got signed, and they told him he was the best, nickel corner out there in free agency. Maybe it got to his head. I don't know. But like, he was going to come around at some point, I believed. And I think, and I'm hopeful that this was the game in which he did it, because he did look good in that second half.
And speaking of that 4th down play, that was the second time that the Rams had run duo. That's a concept that they had run, once before for a long gain. And the 49ers recognized that, and they went back to it on 4th down. And that's part of the adjustments. Like, when people ask you what were the adjustments, it's little stuff like that. Is noticing when a team is about to run something that they ran before, and you got burned the first time, but you don't get burned the second time. Great play by Oliver. So yeah, we're going to find out. And again, this is week 2.
Yeah.
So in week 1, the panic was the right side of the line. You basically have to figure out whether that's something that will evolve and get better. As we know, the 49ers peak at the end of the year. And the same thing with Isaiah Oliver, right? Like, do you sit there and you just say, well, you know, he looked bad in preseason, he's missed some tackles in game 2, or does he evolve, right? And we kind of saw that happen with many players, especially in the secondary, where in the beginning it kind of looked like, and here's the play right here, is they're trying to run a duo trap right there, boom, gets knocked out. Like, they ran it before for a huge gain. And credit Isaiah Oliver for identifying and firing through. Those are adjustments. Those are real adjustments right there, is being able to identify a play like that and being able to beat that. So again, it's week 2. There's no definitive statements that need to be made about any player unless they have such a track record where you know what they are. Like with us, we think Nick Bosa is fine. I think that's going to be fine. I think Javon Hargrave is a baller. I think, we know what Christian McCaffrey is. We know what Deebo Samuel is. We know what Brandon Ayuk is. But as far as players that need to develop, we still need more of a sample size, and we still need them to get more comfortable. And then there's going to be games where, regardless of who the opponent is, the 49ers still have to operate their offense. And I thought that was what was really important in this game as well, too, when you're looking at the right side of the offensive line, which, Spencer Burford got hit with a 0.0 pass rush grade. And I just...
Jay, can you explain that? Because you said, like, you used to do, some of the grading for PFF. And I know you mentioned it on Twitter, but some of the people who maybe didn't see that, can you kind of explain how that works?
Yeah, so before I ever did any sort of content, I did data collection for PFF. So data collection isn't the same as grading, but I did get a chance to peek into the grading system. So data collection essentially is PFF sends you game broadcast film of a college game, and you have to identify all 22 players on the field and give them a position. Depending on where you stand, which is one step to the left or one step to the right, you could be a LE or an LEO. And you have to be able to identify that. Once you compile all of that from the game film, you send that into PFF. And now that goes to the graders, and the graders know where they should be looking at you to grade. Okay, so the grading system is on a scale of -2 to 2. You can get the lowest is a -2, the highest is a +2. And you get graded in between. Essentially what a -2 is like a red zone interception, and a +2 is essentially like the David Tyree catch, right? So on any play, you could have a -1.5, a -1, a -0.5, a 0, a 0.5, a 1, a 0.5, a 2, right? Okay.
But what's the baseline? Is there a baseline, or does the grading start at 0 and then it starts like...
This is the part that it's not the grading system, it's the grader. It's the grader itself. PFF grades are largely subjective. And a lot of it has to do with the fact, does the PFF grader know what he's watching? Do you know what you're watching? Just because someone runs past the guard for a pressure, does it mean that it was on Burford, or was it a miscommunication and McKivitz was supposed to slide and he did his job and it just looks like he ran past him? In the same way, when you watch a cornerback and there's a guy running past them into an open spot, is it his fault, or was it cover 3 and someone blew their assignment from up top? That's my thing. It's less about the grading system and more about the grader. I think the way that we can get to a place where these grades can be more of a reliable source is if the graders understood schematically what was going on more than anything. And the problem is this, is PFF is basically in bed with the NFL. The NFL starts Sunday Night Football and they put PFF rank out of this on that, right? Like it's up there on the screen. Teams are using PFF grades to negotiate with players. So this number that you've been assigned is now the way that people should look, whether you had a good game or had a bad game. Look, did Spencer Burford blow anybody away? No. Did he deserve a 0? Absolutely not. And I'm not sure how you got to this grading system. I know I'm not to this grade without any explanation. And I think what would be more beneficial is, this is what the grade is, and this is how I got there. These are the plays that made me think that. You don't get that. You just get the grade, and you look at the grade, and everyone just looks at that grade and says, damn, he had a really bad game. Exactly. PFF people, I got to tell you, let's watch the games. Look, do you know what you're watching? Do you know what you're watching? You can tell with your untrained eye. You don't have to know things schematically. You can tell when guys struggle on one-on-one blocks. You can tell when guys get beat. But there are times when there's a miscommunication between the guard and the tackle. The tackle blows the assignment, but the guard gets dinged for it. I wish you knew a little bit more about the schematics, and then you could get to that.
Yeah, I mean, Brett in the comments, who is a film genius, he said graders don't know the protection scheme, and that's kind of important when it comes to these things. But yeah, I watched the tape over, and I compiled the all 22 of just the offensive line. Shameless plug. That's on my channel. But I watched it back too, and I was like, yeah, no, like Spencer Burford, he wasn't perfect. Yeah, like he had some plays where he wasn't, holding his guys or anything like that, but nothing egregious. And thankfully, Brock Purdy was getting the ball out quickly, so it wasn't anything that like impacted the game. But I didn't see anything that warranted like a 0 grade. So that's crazy.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't think he was as bad as like some people thought he was. Certainly probably better than he did in week 1. And I thought Colton McKivitz did a pretty solid job as well. And they were putting them out in space as well. So that was nice to see from Colton McKivitz. I think he'll continue to improve, and hopefully that improvement also like carries over to Spencer Burford, because like it does matter who you're lined up next to as well, as we've seen with Aaron Banks.
Yeah. And speaking of ghosts, did anybody see Aaron Donald?
Who?
Should we put him on a milk carton?
Who?
Was he there? Did he play? My goodness, man. For all the talk about Nick Bosa being a ghost, my God, I didn't even know 99 was out there. And again, this is what we talked about with the offensive line. Sure, talent-wise, you're going to be nervous when Colin McKivitz has to go against TJ Watt. By the way, anybody who watched the game last night, TJ Watt makes the most game-changing plays of any edge player. Like, he can swing a game. He's that good, by the way. But you think Kyle Shanahan is out there, like, when they start the game, like, oh, who's that 99 guy? Man, why didn't we account for him? Who is that? No, you have a game plan where you throw the ball, as fast as you can, get it out. You have plays for that. You run the ball the other way. You still have to run your offense, but you still have to help your line as well, too. So, again, if you're worried about the point that I'm trying to make here is more than this. The 49ers are never going to be down in a spot where they have to really throw the ball, right, in many games. That's when you'll find yourself in trouble with Colton McKivitz. And if you need proof, that's exactly what happened with the Rams. When the Rams got down and they were down 10 points and they had to start throwing the ball, that's when the pressure ramped up. You know why? There's no element of surprise with running anymore. And now those guys know they can go get the quarterback. You never want to find yourself being predictable. And you're predictable when you're trying to get back in the game and throw the ball. As long as the 49ers still have the threat of being able to run, play action, do whatever they want, they are going to be very hard to get to. They're not going to do 5 and 7 step dropbacks over and over and over. But when you are losing at the end of the game and you have to, that's when the pass rush comes alive. And that's kind of what you saw a little bit more in the second half of. So the line was fine in this game. Mm-hmm. We didn't even mention the left side. We know what Trent is. Aaron Banks has been playing very well. Brendel's been fine. Yeah. It's 2 games. Let them gel a little bit more. We were much more worried about this offensive line last year. Just let them gel a little bit more. I think everything's fine. I think we've covered this game pretty well. I think we've done it. And by the way, I want to give Diamador Lenore his props. That interception on the undercut was a thing of beauty. He played it perfectly, red eyes, and then he went right under and undercut. That a boy, Demo. That a boy. That looks real good, man. We can talk real quick before we get out of here because I know you got like a hard stop in a little bit. This Giants game. So short week. Arizona and the Giants only win that game because Arizona is Arizona. There's no way they come back from being down that far if it wasn't.
They were down. They were down 20 at one point to the Arizona Cardinals.
It does not matter if there was any other team out there. If there was any other team out there, there's no way they come back in that game. No way. But look, it's the NFL. Guys are going to come to play, but no Saquon Barkley. Hello, Matt Breida. Nice to see you, buddy. Matt Breida revenge game. What's up, buddy?
Don't manifest that, man. Careful.
I'm not manifesting anything. Look, but the important stuff on the offensive line that you need to know: Andrew Thomas is out. Evan Neal got benched, and he's been very bad. This looks like a moment for the 49ers pass rush to really, really feast in this game. And that's what I've got my eye on. That's why I'm like, you're talking about Nick Bosa getting on the board. I think he does. I think Javon Hargrave has an incredible game. And I think this is the week that George Kittle scores a touchdown because out of necessity. I don't think Brandon Ayuk's going to play. Steph, it's the home opener. Vish mentioned this on the show with Rob, and this is something I didn't think about. Apparently, this is going to be a jersey matchup for the ages. A jersey matchup for the ages.
Oh, they're both going throwbacks.
The all-white Giant jerseys with the Giants logo and the stripe under it and the blue helmet against the 94 throwbacks. This has got to be the cleanest jersey aesthetic game in the history of jerseys at this point, right?
Yeah, those Giants ones are clean.
Those are sick.
Yeah.
But then they, because they want to play to their boomer, fan base, they have that old NY that YA Tittle used to wear. Nobody wants to see that, man. Nobody cares about that. That Giants logo from the 80s, that's sick right there. And also, by the way, if I sound a little hype about this game, it's because MetLife Stadium is right out my window.
Yeah.
49ers, if you're watching this, you better bring this one home. There is no room for error here because I am getting bombarded all of a sudden.
Yeah, what are the streets saying about this game?
The streets are buzzed, and they are saying, we're coming for you. You better watch your back. No. And I just beating the Arizona Cardinals and coming back down from 28-0 has these Giants fans all the way back. Even if Barkley's not playing, 49ers, I need you to do this for me. This is personal. I need you to get this one done. Nothing would be worse than the 49ers laying an egg on Thursday Night Football and the Giants winning and me having to walk these streets as like the lone big 49er guy out here. Please don't do this to me, 49ers, please.
Yo, New York fans are different. Like, you remember what they did when like the Knicks were in the playoffs? That was the craziest stuff I'd ever seen. So
they just don't know winning. That's the thing. The Giants fans, they actually know Super Bowls, but Knicks fans, they know no winning. That's why they act like that.
Which is crazy because they got the Yankees out there. It's like, winning to some degree, but
not really. 2009 is like 30 years ago. They don't know winning either. Damn Yankees stink.
Oh my God. But no, they got to win this one for you. It's personal for you. But they should, right? The only concern really is that it's a Thursday night game. And when it's Thursday night, anything can happen in those games too. We see those turn out very sloppy. That's why even when it's against two good teams, you see Thursday night football games, be kind of sloppy. So shout out Keith Murphy for the super chat here. He said, "Let's get Eli Mitchell some carries." We did talk about that early in the show, and we do expect Elijah Mitchell to get a little more run in this one. Because they've been running Christian McCaffrey to the ground so far, but we understand it based on that Rams game. It made sense because that game was close. You needed your stud out there. But yeah, I do expect Elijah Mitchell to kind of potentially be an X factor in this one because he is a really talented running back and he should be healthy now, week 3. Plenty time removed from his preseason injury. I expect the 49ers should come away with a win on this one. It'll hinge on, the defense doing what they do. They need to come out full energy. You can't give the Giants any hope in this one. You know what I mean? And I think the one concern here, of course, Barkley's going to be out, so that's a plus for the 49ers, but Daniel Jones can move too, right? Like he's got some wheels on him. So you got to make sure you keep him contained in the pocket. In the past we've mentioned, 49ers sometimes struggle against these more mobile quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Daniel Jones, not, particularly the fastest quarterback or even the best quarterback when it comes to throwing and all that. But, you just got to be mindful of those things, keep them out of those rushing lanes and things like that. So I think they should get it done. I think the offense at the end of the day is going to be too much for the Giants, even if Ayuk is not out there. So I'm expecting a 49ers win.
Yeah, their favorite, Vegas is in on the Niners, 10.5. That's a lot. I don't do spreads or anything like that. Like for me, my safe bet is going to be 49ers money line, George Kittle anytime touchdown. I haven't really been missing too much these first 2 weeks. I had Ayuk in the money line, and last week I had Debo in the money line. So let's keep it rolling. Let's keep trying to make
all you guys know. He's letting all you guys know.
Look. When you get it right, you get it right. When you get it wrong, you better make sure you say you get it wrong. But I ain't been wrong lately, so it's all right. Okay. No, I do expect the 49ers to go out there, play their game. I do think that there was a little idea of like, okay, I can run Christian a little bit more on Sunday. And I know Thursday we'll be able to get Elijah Mitchell involved as well, too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of it. And again, I don't know if Ayuk's going to play, but this might be the best time for you to go to 85 now. Like, and maybe use him a little bit more.
He's not just saying that because he has a bet.
No. I mean, but that's really why I'm putting the bet down is because it's like, man, I mean, if you're not going to overwork Christian McCaffrey, that 85 guy is still pretty good too, man. It might be okay to just get him involved a little bit. Yes. And please, can we talk about this? Can we please talk about this? So Technics Cheek says, favored by 10.5, wondering if the Giants will kick a field goal at the last second to lose by 10 like the Rams did last week. This is a huge conspiracy theory, and it doesn't even seem like it's hard to spot. The Rams were plus 7.5. They were losing by 10. Kicking that field goal helped the Rams cover. That felt like one of those Buffalo Wild Wings commercials where they're like, send it to overtime, and the guy goes to kick and it just gets blocked or whatever. Man, is that suspicious, man. That's why I made the joke. Sean McVay cashing his plus 7.5 ticket, and I'm leaving here with something. Like, he had to get something, right? Like, look, the only other logical explanation, which I think is insane to think about this, like in week 2. Well, the point differential could be the tiebreaker. Is that what the Rams are thinking about right now? Where like Sean McVay was like, man, we need these 3 points just in case we tie for a playoff spot and we have a better. Come on,
man. You don't see teams thinking about that. Usually they go for the touchdowns. So, because at that point, they wouldn't have a chance to win, but you still want to cut the lead to as close to it as you can. So you go for the touchdown. I've never seen that before. It could have implications later in the season, sure, but I don't know. It is sus.
if the Rams make the playoff spot because of that field goal, I will completely take everything back. I feel like I'm on the good side of history here. Steven says, great show. Give Mason a ball. Thank you for your super chat. Yeah, the point differential thing, that's the only other logical explanation, but the real explanation is Sean McVay had a hell of a lot of plus 7.5 Rams covering, and he was like, well, I'm leaving here with something. I'm getting this done. What an electric way to end the show. Conspiracy theories and all, tinfoil hats, all that. Guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to all 3 channels. Make sure you guys are getting the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get all your audio podcasts. Make sure you follow Steph on Twitter at Steph49K. Make sure you follow me, Jason Aponte2103 on X or Twitter, whatever the hell they're calling it these days. Make sure you follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network on X or Twitter or and Instagram. And Steph, this is a great episode. And we've got like this bunched up week with content because we're right. Like today, I feel like today we have to close the book on the Rams game and go right into the Thursday night game. And I kind of like it because Sunday I get to watch football with regular people and enjoy myself. So I like Thursday night football.
We're going to touch grass this weekend. Let's go.
I love it. So for Steph, for Jay, we're out of here.